Good evening, folks. I have discussion C for you tonight. We're discussing the effects of caregiving on teenagers for elderly folks. Okay, so here we go with tonight's presentation for you. The article highlights a shrinking reality. Surveys in Japan reveal that teenagers aged 15 to 19 are increasingly stepping into caregiving roles for aging relatives. This phenomenon, once thought to be confined to adults, is now reshaping adolescence itself. The findings show that caregiving responsibilities weigh heavily on young people, leading to heightened psychological distress, emotional strain, and disruptions in their education and social lives. The research was conducted by Osaka Metropolitan University, focusing on 1,581 young caregivers. Data was collected in two phases. 2021, during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, when caregiving was compounded by lockdowns, school closures, and heightened family stress. 2024, after the pandemic, offering a comparative look at how caregiving burdens evolved once society began to stabilize. The longitudinal approach allowed researchers to track not only the prevalence of caregiving, but also its shifting impact across different social contexts. How the researchers measured impact. Two validated tools were used. Kessler 6 item psychological distress scale, or K6, a widely recognized measure of mental health strain, capturing symptoms like anxiety, sadness, and fatigue. Positive and negative outcomes of caregiving. PNOC questionnaire, a tool instrument that records both the potential rewards, such as feelings of maturity or family closeness, and the cost, such as isolation, resentment, or exhaustion of caregiving. Together, these measures provided a multi-layered picture of how caregiving affects teens, not just clinically, but in their everyday emotional lives. Main findings and takeaways. Caregiving is widespread among teens in Japan, reflecting the demographic reality of an aging society. Uh, Psychological distress scores were consistently higher among caregiving teens compared to peers without such responsibilities. The pandemic amplified the burden, but even in the post-pandemic period, caregiving continued to exert a significant toll. The study was published in Scientific Reports, underscoring its credibility and contribution to global discussions on youth caregiving. Why this matters and broader implications. Japan's rapidly aging population is a preview of challenges many countries will face. As older adults require more care, younger generations may be drawn into caregiving roles earlier than expected. This raises critical questions. How do care how do caregiving responsibilities affect adolescent development, identity, and future opportunities? What supports educational, psychological, financial are needed to prevent long-term harm? What how can schools and communities recognize and validate the invisible labor of teen caregivers? The findings point to a policy gap. While adult caregivers are often acknowledged in health and society and social systems, teen caregivers remain largely invisible. Addressing this gap could mean introducing school-based counseling, flexible attendance policies, peer support groups, and respite services tailored to adolescents. Practical points for readers. Families, if a teenager is providing care, monitor for signs of burnout, withdrawal from friends, declining grades, or emotional exhaustion. Educators. Schools can play a pivotal role by identifying caregiving students and offering flexible learning options. Policymakers and organizations. Programs that provide respite care, financial assistance, or counseling can ease the burden and protect teens' mental health. Deeper reflection. This research reframes caregiving as a cross-generational issue. Cross-generational issue. It remains It reminds us that aging doesn't only affect the elderly, it ripples outward, reshaping the lives of children and teenagers who step into roles of responsibility far earlier than expected. In many ways, these young caregivers embody both the resilience and vulnerability of societies facing demographic change. Would you like me to expand into a comprehensive lens showing how teen caregiving in Japan compares to similar trends in Europe or the US? That could highlight whether this is a uniquely Japanese challenge or part of a broader global shift. Summary. This article reviews emerging research on young adult caregivers, roughly ages 18 to 29, who provide unpaid care to older family members and proposes a focused research agenda to guide future work. It synthesizes what is known about who these caregivers are, the tasks they perform, why some young adults become caregivers, how they appraise burden and reward, and the short and long-term implications for well-being. Why the study young adult caregivers separately. Young adulthood is a distinct life stage, a time to flourish, or a time for finishing education, starting careers, and forming relationships. So caregiving at this stage can have different meanings and consequences than caregiving in midlife or later life. The authors argue that developmental timing, identity formation, and life course goals make young adult caregiving a unique phenomenon that warrants its own theoretical and impartial attention, definitions, and who counts as a caregiver. The paper highlights measurement challenges. Caregiving ranges from everyday help to intensive personal care, and definitions vary across studies, e.g., tasks, list, time thresholds, or self identification. For young adults, tasks that exceed cultural expectations for their age, such as managing medical appointments, translating or handling technology for older relatives, are often the tipping point that makes help caregiving. What young adults do and why they become caregivers. Young adults commonly perform household tasks, transportation, shopping, and increasingly medical appointments. Or personal care. And they also provide culturally specific supports like language brokering, brokering and tech assistance. Who becomes a caregiver is shaped by the care recipient's needs, e.g., dementia, family structure, proximity, social economic resources, and cultural beliefs about family obligation. Factors that vary by race, ethnicity, and socioeconomic status. Appraisals, consequences, and potential beliefs, but are benefits. Caregiving produces mixed outcomes. Many young caregivers report higher rates of psychological distress, financial strain, and disruptions to education or employment, especially when providing intimate personal care or many hours of help. At the same time, caregiving can yield rewards, greater family closeness, skills, empathy, and a sense of purpose that may buffer stress for some individuals. The balance of harms and benefits depends on resources, paid care, social supports, coping skills, and cultural framing. The authors call for diverse methods, longitudinal daily life, quantitative, mixed methods to capture intermittent and networked caregiving, attention to racial, ethnic, and socioeconomic differences, and development of interventions tailored to young adults. They note policy gaps. Examples include limited leave, protections for caregiving beyond immediate immediate family members, and a lack of supports in higher education and training programs, and urge research that can inform culturally sensitive programs and policies. If you'd like, I can turn this into a one-page brief or for policymakers, a side outline, uh, a slide outline for research similar or comparison showing how the article's agenda aligns with existing caregiving policies. All right, guys, that's your C for tonight. I will try and do a D later. Give me a bit for a break, and I'll see if I can put a D together for you for tonight. I'll be back on shortly for D. For now, Gator Wellness, take care, folks.